All right, so let's start. People will join in. Can you hear me all clearly? Yep, that's great.
Yes, I
So,
can.
thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Well, today's webinar is titled PEP for Kids, where PEP stands for Performance Enhancement Program. While our discussion will focus on awareness and education programs that help kids, the parents and coaches in understanding and developing the mental aspects of their game, we'll also try and discuss other elements surrounding this issue if time permits. My name is Amit Gadkari and I'm the founder of Nut Sports. At Nut Sports, we work with sports psychologists in developing a structured and personalized mental conditioning program for performance enhancement of athletes. Our programs and interventions are aimed at individual athletes, teams, academies, schools, colleges, associations, and so on. So let's come straight to what are we trying to address today? What is the problem that Nudge for Kids is trying to address? Well, this problem is real. It's fairly large and it's not restricted just to India alone. Statistics across from all different parts of the world have shown time and again that 3 out of 4 kids, they quit active sports by the time they are 12 or 13 years old. So this is clearly a big issue that everyone is grappling with. Why does this happen, and how can we, all of us who are a part of this sporting ecosystem in various roles that we play in the development of the kids, help address this problem? But before we start our discussion, let me introduce today's panel members quickly. We have Dr. Sujata Kelkar Shetty. She is from Bangalore, a parent of a 15-year-old budding cricketer. But more importantly, she is, there are so many facets to her own career. She is the author of 99 Not Out, Your Guide to a Long and Healthy Life, a book I think she released just before the pandemic, if I'm not wrong, Sujata.
Yes.
She is a biological scientist and certified life coach, a wellness coach, helping individuals and organizations take care of their mental and physical health. She has a PhD in toxicology from the University of Kentucky College of Medicine, having done a bachelor's in genetics from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Welcome, Sujata. I would love to hear from you today.
Thank you for having me, Amit.
We have another parent, Sakshi Pandit. She's from Mumbai. She's at a different period of parenting a kid. Her daughter is 10 years old, and she is on the cusp of entering the world, the competitive world of track and field. Sakshi herself is an experienced senior manager working with many years in the event services industry. Currently, she is handling a major project which is going to really impact and give a lot of insights into the sporting world. She is heading the Sports Expo 2023 initiative with Informa Markets, having worked with them for 14 years. Welcome, Sakshi. Look forward to listening to you today. We have Amit Malik, who's going to be joining us soon. Amit is one of the key persons within the Indian sports ecosystem. He is, as we speak, probably arriving in Delhi airport, flying in from Hyderabad airport, flying in from Delhi. Amit works with the Abhinav Bindra Foundation Trust. He heads the sports social impact initiatives with them. As I mentioned, he's a key spokesperson and a facilitator within the Indian sports ecosystem. His focus areas are basically physical literacy, Olympism, and working towards helping every athlete across the sports in the holistic development of every athlete. He's been associated with the Pulela Gopichand Academy. Currently, he is the country head of the International Physical Literacy Association. And there are so many facets that Amit brings to the table, and we are looking forward to hearing his views today on the panel. And finally, but probably the key personnel when it comes to developing any athlete's performance program, and that's the sports psychologist on the panel. Let me start with Kirtana. Kirtana Swaminathan is a sports and performance psychologist, having graduated from Loughborough University, UK. She's also an author. She wrote a book which is titled When I Look Back. It was 21 already. She is also a certified neuro-linguistic programming coach. Welcome, Kirtana. We have Morel. Morel Beverly-Disa is also a sports and performance psychologist, an alumni of Loughborough again. She has her own independent practice and she works extensively with the Sports Authority of India. She is also visiting faculty with many colleges and institutions in Mumbai. Lovely to have you here, Morel. I'm just trying to figure out if Amit has come on the call. I'm not able to see him yet, but I guess Amit will join this. So let's anyway kickstart the webinar. And I think my first question will go to both Kirtana and Morel. How big is this problem of kids quitting sports at an early age, and what are the reasons? Morel, you may want to take it. Yeah.
Right. So starting out, I would like to start with just talking about why athletes join, why children join sport, organized sport in the first place, and that's mainly because they get into sport for the experience, for the fun of it, but very often it is the parents that take that decision to get kids involved in sport. Again, the reasons range from fitness to an active lifestyle to specializing in a particular sport. And somewhere along the way there are several areas that a young
Sorry, there's
Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. Sorry. Yeah, somewhere along the way there are several things that come into play. As they're learning new skills, there are new experiences. Sometimes they fail to learn certain skills, they fail to execute certain skills. Their training environment from time to time it does not include the fun element that most kids look for. There's a lack of belongingness, of affiliation, especially if the team environment or the training environment isn't great. And several other reasons like this. Maybe they're not challenged enough or they're challenged too much. And all of these are contributing factors that ultimately lead to, children not enjoying sport anymore or feeling burnt out at the end of the day, even at a very young age. And these are some of the, basic reasons why kids drop out of sport. Kirtana, would you like to add to that?
Yeah. So, in addition to what Morel said, I think parents also tend to look at competition too early into sport, which is, they are supposed to be developing in the sport, and not just in the sport, even their fine motor skills, cross motor skills. Emotionally, they develop quite a bit at that age, and that's when parents put a lot of pressure in terms of them competing. So all they look for is results, right? So, and then what happens is children get burnt out, they get highly stressed, and they no longer enjoy the sport. Like Morel said, the fun element is completely lost. So I think that's the main reason children drop out of sport very, very early. Yeah.
I just trying to sort out the muting issue. Yeah. So I think we've got these insights, and I think statistics have also shown that parents and coaches do have a certain role to play, even though their intentions may be positive and they want their kids to do well. But sometimes they put the kids through a very regimented structure, through a they could be a bit overbearing. And may I request some of the participants to kindly mute, please? Yeah. So my question is to Sujata and Sakshi both, that as a parent, what's your biggest worry when your child is playing active competitive sport? Maybe Sujata, you may want to start. You want to address this question. Sujata, did you hear the question? Yeah, you're not able to. Okay, sorry. Can you do it now? Can you unmute yourself? Try now. One second.
Yes, done.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you repeat the question, Amit?
So my question was that as a parent, what are your biggest worries or concerns, when there's your kid playing playing active sports?
Yes. So, first I want to say that I don't have a sports background myself. I didn't train in any sport seriously or unseriously. And therefore, this entire process for my son has been driven largely by him, with a lot of support by his father. So his father loves cricket, loves tennis, played it himself at various levels, and saw that our son enjoyed it. So he's been involved in playing, both tennis and cricket from the time he was sort of 4 or 5. And that said, we have provided an environment of encouragement and support without any pressure, because what I wanted from the sport from the very beginning was, for the child to be physically and mentally healthy, for him to be to develop the qualities that you develop when you play a team sport, and also to see people coming from various backgrounds to play the same sport. So at an academy, you see children from all kinds of backgrounds, parents with all kinds of careers, and he's largely been going on his on his own. So my concerns for him now, as a 15-year-old cricketer, and he's taking it quite seriously, as seriously as a 15-year-old can, with dedication and commitment. My concerns for him, honestly, are only about his injuries. I am not concerned about what is going to happen in the future, because as a parent of a sports child, you really can't be. If you get concerned too much, you're not going to be in the game. You're going to get lost in wanting certain milestones achieved. And a sports athlete each sports athlete, I think, has his own or her own journey. They are growing at different rates. They're developing mentally at different paces. Their talent is developing in different ways. And all you can do is, support it and make sure, and by make sure, I mean by not pressuring them, but by encouraging them to work hard at it, right? So absolutely, the one place where his parents, both me and my husband, don't compromise on is the amount of effort the child puts in. So he has to go to practice, he has to engage, he has to, play his tournaments if he wants to play the sport. So he can't have it both ways. He can't be playing cricket and casually, because at this level, then there's a compromise, right? Then academics is now taking a backseat. So it's very clear to him that he's making cricket his focus now, with academics being a backseat, because you cannot do both unless you are really able to manage studying quickly, because cricket takes a lot of time. And like a lot of other sports, it's played, over many hours, sometimes over many days.
Right. What about your views, Sakshi? You have a daughter who's keen to start with track and field at a fairly serious level. So what are your concerns as a parent?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Amit. So, like how Sujata, she mentioned that, of course, as a parent, my daughter, she is now, I'm planning to put her in sports. So we have not actually started her training. But like she said that, as a parent, of course, injury is something, sports injury is something that, of course, is the concern. In addition to that, I feel as a parent, when we are planning to start a child, the awareness of that what in choosing a right sport for the children, and making our child more independent, by where they themselves are able to understand that where they are more inclined towards. Otherwise, as a parent, most of the time, we whatever we had thought of during our early time, we try and enforce the same thing on our child. That, like, personally, I've been an active sports participant since my college time. So I've played volleyball, I've played badminton. So I feel that my daughter should also start. But no, my daughter, she clearly had mentioned that she wants to go be an athletic. She wants to participate in the marathon and all that. So so encouragement, listening to the child interest, I think that is something that I'm paying attention to. And since, like, I'm also into sports, so I understand all of it. So therefore I feel counseling, mentoring to child at starting age is definitely very important, apart from sports injuries and the awareness, and the scope in the sports field for a student or the participant when they pursue their career along with academics. Yeah, of course, because I must say that my that, like, children who are into ICSE boards, since morning to afternoon, first of all, they are in school after COVID time now. So by the time they come home, it's already evening. So for playing a game, or actually, they hardly get any time. So time management is also something, I think, another concern, where they can't go down, they can't there meet their friends. So I think sports will be a one where they will be able to make new
Sure.
friends, as well as they'll be able to kind of socializing, how that learning will also come along with sports, I feel.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. In fact, I think we've got some very interesting questions from the people who have registered, and we'll take those at the end of the panel discussion. And I think there are
Right.
some very valid points that you have mentioned of, the relationship that a athlete parent who herself or himself has played has played sports,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are always struggling that, they had their own way of playing the sport, and now the kid is probably not playing the same sport that they would like them to play. There's a bit of a
Exactly.
conflict, and that has an impact on the child, but we'll come to that later when we
Right.
take the questions. But I think Morel and Kirtana, sports psychologists do have a very important role to play, especially for kids
Yeah.
who are in that transition age, when they are 12, 13, and then going into an age where competition increases, the issues surrounding adolescence they start cropping up, and there is academic pressure as well. So what role
Absolutely.
does a sports psychologist play in addressing these issues? Morel, you may want to start, or Kirtana?
Right.
Yeah. Uh, right. So when it comes to working with student athletes and kids that are just getting into sport, or are at the grassroots level, I think more than focusing on the competitive aspect or the performance related skills, it's helpful or important to work on the foundation level skills that help uh, these athletes or these children cope with the various experiences or situations that are probably going to come their way, right? A very common example of any child, not only those involved in sport, is at a young age, we're used to listening to a lot of instructions, right? Do this, do that. We get it at school, we get it at home, we get it almost everywhere, really. And am I not audible?
You are.
You're audible.
You are
Absolutely
audible.
audible. Yeah.
There's a message that says I'm not. So,
No, very clear it is.
all right, sorry. Continuing. Right, so we're getting these messages as children from everywhere, do as you're told, and something along those lines. And over time, what happens is this trains kids to respond in a particular way, right? Where they don't learn to think for themselves. Of course, we know they're kids and they can't really think for themselves, but it is helpful to give kids some level of autonomy in terms of being able to think, because that is something that leads to developing important critical thinking and problem solving skills, right? Something as simple as telling a child they need to wake up in the morning. Of course, that's how it starts, telling them that they need to wake up at a particular time to reach training at a particular time. But over time, and I'm sure a lot of parents have this complaint that they have to force the kid to get up, to take their routine seriously, to do ABC things. And I think working with athletes, rather than telling them what to do, working with them to explore why some of these behaviors are helpful and why they want to engage with them is a more helpful approach as against telling them what to do. Because over time, what happens is they can then learn to identify these helpful behaviors by themselves, of course, with support. So I think that is a very important skill to work on. Second, I would say is, just making them aware of their emotions. And I think Kirtana will elaborate a lot more on this. But, just making them aware of the various emotions that they're probably going to experience in the sports setting is important. And letting them know that all of these emotions are normal, whether it's anger, in a particular situation, or just feeling sad when things don't go your way. Because and I've heard this very often, parents or even coaches and even other athletes telling athletes, you shouldn't feel sad if you lose. I mean, you obviously can't feel happy if you don't do well in a particular event or if you lose, right? But just helping them process these emotions. And these are the skills that are, I think, very, very helpful early on.
I'm just going to jump in for a minute, Amit,
Absolutely.
to say something to Sakshi, and I hope it supports the other parents also listening. One of the wonderful things about, a child who gets dedicated to a sport, once they find what it is that they want to do, and that's the case with my son for sure, is that they automatically learn how to manage their time. They automatically choose not to go to birthday parties. They automatically choose not to socialize, because they really realize very early on that their life is about sport and education, and that's it. And they're not unhappy about it. So, I feel unhappy about it sometimes. I used to. Now, of course, Akash is at a different level. Now it's really serious in certain ways. But I used to feel bad that the child never got to attend any birthday parties, but he didn't. And it's quite remarkable how they can make these choices in a very clear-eyed way when they found something that they really, really enjoy. I think that's very important. So the only two questions I've ever asked, and this is because of an advice of a coach, is he said, never ask the child what he scored, never ask the child whether they won or lost. Just ask him what he ate and if he enjoyed himself. So I've continued to do that. Like, did you finish your lunchbox? Did you finish your snack? Did you have fun? And now he's sort of, he's 15, so it's not even a conversation. But when he was 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, it was very easy for me. I didn't have to do anything else. And I think them knowing that they are supported and loved at home, no matter what, is really important, because what they struggle with outside, the level of competition is so severe, particularly in cricket. It's so intense that they need to know that they have a space that's safe. And home needs to be that space. So parents should not be putting any pressure on their children, 100%. They learn everything else on their own. It's remarkable.
Thanks, Sujata. And glad to have Amit. Amit Malik has joined us. And welcome, Amit. We were just talking about the role that sports psychologist plays. And I think what Morel mentioned, one of the key areas was the importance of addressing this issue through education and awareness. And Amit, I know you've done a phenomenal amount of work in this area. And I remember having a conversation with you, where you mentioned about the importance of hand-holding a child, listening to your child and giving them the necessary attention. I would like you to elaborate on this for the audience, because we have amongst the audience a lot of coaches, a lot of parents, and some of the kids who are into active sports. Amit, over to you. Yep.
Thank you, Amit. I think this topic is quite close to my heart as well. And based on my understanding of lot of models, coaches understanding, parent understanding, simply I would put it that there are 3 stages of this relationship with sports. Important part. 3 stages of relationship with sports. First stage is play. Second is practice. Third is perform. So as a parent, if we are aware, as a coaches, we are aware that we'll never reach the practice without the play being fulfilled initially. will never be able to touch the performance if the deliberate practice has not been reached through that. So these three simplify, I call the parenting model of play, practice, and perform. And in that regard, being cognizant that each stage has its own value as well.
True.
Play has a value of being mindful. Play has a value of being inherent to the child nature of enjoying. Same way, practice has a value of being putting the perseverance into perspective, putting effort into the cause, and the performance is bringing it all together. So I think first is that understanding. Second perspective which I have is that look at that, what is the value of a system? What do you want to get out of the system? And I realize is that we want to get out a better child through the system of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So as a coach, as a parent, we need to maybe look at the what is most valuable is a person who's playing the sport, not the outcome which comes through sports. And with that clarity, as the question was more specific to education awareness, I think if that goal post is very clearly visible and reflecting in our practices, either as a parent or as a coach, that most valuable is a child. Sports is about building experiences through 3 stages. And can we be cognizant of putting these practices every day? And I personally feel that it's more about setting the goalposts right and seeing that what is the value to each child in session. I look at 2 ways. It's more about the relationship with the sports, the relationship with physical activity, and of course the values which sports give you to develop yourself. So there is a need for all of us to collaboratively realign our goals, clearly reflect on the most important person in the sport is still the human. The human is flourishing through the sports, and can he or she be the better person coming out of that system? If we realign that goal, probably it could be much efficient and effective for everyone.
No, absolutely. And I think this is a very valid point that you've raised. And I think, Kirtana, you have done a lot of work when it comes to education and awareness, especially when working with parents and coaches. I'd love to hear from you about that.
So we, in terms of parents and coaches, intentions of theirs are absolutely right. But then the way it comes across, again, it could be because of the cultural context, or maybe because of the way they've been taught to respond to things. It just goes wrong a lot. So in that way, I think there is a lot of education that is required. And so for a parent usually who does not know too much about the entire developmental milestone, how a child would react, how a child would perceive, they assume that hand-holding is controlling. They assume that hand-holding is making decisions for them. They do not realize that hand-holding means guiding them, giving them the entire platter and say, okay, now you choose. These are the good things, these are the bad things. So in that context, I think perceptions differ a lot, and there needs to be this education and this challenge to the current belief system that exists as to this is how things need to be. So even earlier, coaching was very different earlier. Now coaching is going to be very different, especially with all the psychoeducation that's happening, because it's no longer what it used to be earlier. It's more about empowering the child, giving the child the identity to make better choices, to make better decisions. And again, I think Morel spoke about emotions and that part of it. So when it comes to all of us are human beings, all of us do have emotions, and we have to understand that's going to be part of us. So, again, earlier people used to think that emotions are a bad thing. You're not supposed to feel, something, again, negative. That's not negative at all, right? So, again, changing perspectives is very important. And I think that's the basic work that, we kind of engage in. Once that basic work is done, saying, anger is not negative. Sadness is not negative. In fact, sadness, anger, disappointment, everything is necessary in your life, and we just need to teach them how to deal with it, right? We are not going to protect them from the pain part of it. We are going to teach them how to deal with it, and that will be the role of a coach and a parent, because sport does have a lot of, I mean, you've got to deal with a lot of failure in sport. You are going to fall, but how do you get back up? So I think these are very important skills that, that we have to instill in them. I think it goes, without saying, it's parents, coaches, and the athletes, so that the child actually becomes a lot more empowered.
Yeah.
I agree with that. As a parent, I'm just going to quickly jump in and say that the great thing about sport is that it itself teaches you that, right? So exactly. I see my son's resilience, and it is through the roof. He's more resilient than I am at bouncing back from adversity and challenge, because the child has already faced so many failures in his life, and he's also seen success. And that's sort of the beauty of sport. That's why I would encourage parents to encourage their children to play sport, because these lessons come in real time for them, and you really just need to support them. And of course, emotions just are, right? There's no judging whether anger or joy or jealousy or envy. These are just, there's no question of judging them. The other piece I wanted to share with parents who may have come from an academic, mindset, and we all tend to, right? To do well in life in India, you have to quote unquote score. The thing about sport, though, is that the effort and output don't necessarily relate the way they do in academics. You can put a ton of effort in, and particularly like a sport like cricket, so much depends on extraneous factors that you may not get a result, right? So you actually have to educate yourself on the kind of sport your child plays, educate yourself on the kind of challenges that particular sport has, and how it's changed, even if you played it. So even if you played it at a certain level, things are very different now. I think there's tremendous learning that is possible for a parent of a sports child that is actually very valuable for the family as a whole.
True. In fact, Sakshi, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I think just looking at the practical, the way, day to day, like we all are, working. Like for me, most of the time I'm either traveling or I'm not at home. So, that's when, we actually, since, they take a lot of decision making. So the child, when they're planning, whether it's for sports or the education or regarding their life, at the beginning, at the very early stage these days, because it's so competitive, that they have started taking their own decisions. When they're taking decision as a parent, when we are not around, it is actually their school buddies, their coaches, their teachers, and of course the sports psychologist, the counselor. They play that role in directing them to take the right decision. So I think the training, when we start at the early age, that actually helps them when they'll be at our level, at the senior, and that's when, as a parent, I feel, when we feel we don't have time, because it's so busy for everybody. And since early age, they've started, like, if I have to take example of my daughter, she has already accepted the fact that I'm going to spend a very less time with her. So she started doing her own self studies. She takes own call what she like, what she doesn't like. And I feel, as a parent, we need to be more as a mentor, where they're free to express. When the child is free to express, and I think that is when we will be able to understand their emotions. So I think that's what
Absolutely. Amit, I think Amit had a very positive reaction when you used the word mentoring, because that's what he wants most parents and coaches and everyone around a child to do it. Because I think kids are smart enough to take their own decisions, right? They understand their own emotions better. They understand their own strengths and weaknesses much better than what the other person, even if that other person is a parent or a sibling, would do it. Right, Amit?
Yeah, I think so. The way I look at that, children are learning, consuming from the environment, from the behaviors, and they are also building their mental maps every day. What gets rewarded when parents are happy, when coach is happy, when coach shies away. So if we can give direction to that whole process, because they are already being trained mentally by the environment, we are not going to give them a new formula of innovation. But if we just give them the direction of that alignment, it could be very empowering, because all of a sudden, I just want to quote, once asked Gopichan sir that people say how to detach with failure. He said, first detach with success. So all of a sudden, I have a process for children that this is possible, that if all the children can be aligned to look at their habit and the process, and habit as a success, or the process as a success, or effort as a success, see, all of a sudden there's no failure, because you gave your best. And same thing Abhinav Binder has mentioned in his book, that he used to face mirror every day and ask himself, have I given my best of the day? And if the answer is yes, I get something which nobody earns, self-respect.
True.
And that is so essential for a child to build that self-respect and self-esteem. So with the counselor, with parent, I think there's a responsibility and opportunity to give a clear direction to the thinking which children are being exposed to.
Right.
And many of time it's not their experience. They would say, when this person wins, coach celebrate and bring some sweet. So I start building small connection in my mind. But if we can, I think, realign that. And I want to give very interesting example for my own daughter. We shifted to Hyderabad because I was working with Gopichan, Pulela Gopichan. My daughter went to her first tournament. It was under 11. She reached quarter final. And Hyderabad is like a hub of the badminton. And I asked that, first tournament in Hyderabad, you have reached district level quarter. And you know what she told me? And I got shivering listening that. She said that I could not play 2 matches because 2 opponents didn't turn up. I missed playing 2 matches. And that was me knowing so much about sports, working with stalwarts. But this is how much unlearning we need to do as a parent as well. Because we want
True.
to live a lot of our life through them.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the key questions that a lot of parents have and even coaches have is, at what stage should mental conditioning be introduced into the young kid's life? What is the role that a sports psychologist can play? And in fact, I was listening to Shane Watson, the Australian cricketer, on a podcast, and he mentioned that he missed it out because he regretted not going through a mental training session or working with a sports psychologist at a age as young as 13, 14, 15. And in fact, I also had a couple of kids who started sports psychology sessions at the age of 18, 19. They said, sir, हमें ये मिलता अगर हम 13-14 साल के थे तभी मुझे हमें और फायदा होता. So obviously, I think the parents and the coaches also need to realize that mental conditioning programs with sports psychologists does not convey that there is anything wrong with the child. It only goes to strengthen some of the positives that your child has and helps the child to look at sports in a fairly different way. It's exactly the same as a child would get up in the morning and go for a run or go to the gym to build his muscles. Here he's training something else. This is another key area that most parents and coaches need to understand. And I'm sure Morel and Kirtana, they work with kids who are, I know that as young as 8, 9, 10, because there are certain sports where kids start at a very early age. Sports like swimming or even shooting, archery. Kids start at a very early age, and that's where they start needing these inputs. Yeah, Morel, anything you'd like to add on this?
Can everyone hear me though? There's a procession passing by and it's very loud.
No, we can hear you. We can't hear the procession. Don't worry.
Right. So just something I would like to add, then I'll keep it short, is, when we're talking about introducing this kind of support, right, mental support to young athletes, I think the approach that we always like to take is prevention rather than cure. What happens when we're working with older athletes, and I think Kirtana might be able to attest this, a lot of the areas we're working on are correction. This is the problem I've faced, how do I overcome it, right? But when we're working with younger athletes, we're training them with ABC skills so that they can, use them in specific situations if and when they encounter them, just like technical training. You don't wait until you have to use a particular shot to learn how to play it, right? You learn it and then use it as the opportunity arises. So I think that's the approach that, we think is most helpful with athletes as well.
I'm going to jump in and say my son has had a mental health coach of various kinds for the last 2 years. It has been very helpful. I think just as a parent also knowing that there is somebody the child can speak to when the child doesn't speak to you, particularly when there are failures, which there are many in cricket. I mean, I consider them failures, but they're not actually failures if you think about them when you deconstruct them. But they look like them on the face of it, right? When you are out after at zero or et cetera, et cetera. So many scenarios for a batsman. But for him too, to have that non-judgmental space and we can talk about what makes for a good sports psychologist, but I think, or a good mental coach rather, but it's very important, I think, for the child to have that person in their lives. And whenever they start taking it seriously, and depending on the sport, I think every parent should invest in it if they can, because it really, I believe it has helped my son. And we're glad to have PEP helping us now.
So, I'm going to jump on to some of the questions that we received from the panelists, and those are very, very interesting questions, that we have had. So let me just see if I can share those questions with you. Yes, one of the aspects that we had 3-4 parents asking about it, fun element in sports. How do I keep my child motivated to continue in one sport where they get tempted to try out multiple sports by their friends? The other question was, how can we keep sports fun yet competitive? So these are certain questions, and obviously when a child is as young as 8, 9, 10, they get into sports not because they want to win a medal or come first. They basically get into sports first primarily because they enjoy playing it, right? I mean, they enjoy catching up with their friends and just having fun. And that's where one of the reasons that statistics has shown that kids stop playing sport is because they stop having fun. It's the fun is just taken away from the sport that they love. Any inputs here from any one of you on the fun aspect? How do you retain the fun aspects within the sport that they play?
I think parents not taking it seriously themselves is very important, right? And by not seriously, I don't mean not engaging with them, but not making it a competitive thing, not putting pressure, enjoying the sport with the child. One parent who really gets the sport or learns the sport so that they can talk about it with the kid is important, because I think the child can sense where you're coming from. So it needs to be authentic. So parents can't fake their way through this. They have to be genuinely interested in keeping the child sort of happy and motivated, and they spend so much of their time doing it that you really want them to be having fun, particularly when they're young.
Absolutely. So this was the other area that came up, and this is something that I think Morel and Kirtana can address, is pressure and motivation. Kids may feel a failure in their development in the game and the presence of competitive sports, forcing them to withdraw and not continue with the game. How do we keep them motivated in difficult situations? And how does a parent help nurture good work ethic in young athletes? This is all again boiling down to pressure and motivation. How do we resolve these issues? Sorry, Kirtana, Morel.
Yeah, I can go first. Before I address that, though, Amit, I just have one something to pitch in with the previous question in terms of how do you motivate athletes to continue. And I think there was one question that stated, how do you motivate the athlete to stay on one sport when there's pressure to try out other sports? And I have a counter question to that. Why is it necessary for young athletes to stick to one sport? Right, because I know there are various theories out there that talk about specializing at a young age, but I think there's also a lot of research, in fact more supporting the fact of letting children explore various sports at a young age, and then letting them go ahead with the one that they choose, because a lot of children I've seen change their sport, and not only very early on but even later on in life, and they have succeeded. And I think something that I've seen among parents also is that they want their athlete, and even coaches sometimes, they want their athlete to, focus on that one sport and excel at that one sport. Children can excel at multiple things. They have it in them. They just need the right support to be able to do that. Moving on to the pressure part of it, and how do you help them stay motivated again? I think there are three things that are really important. One is that the athlete feels like they feel competent enough, like they can do it, right? If I believe that I can't do something, if it's too difficult for me, I'm unable to do it, chances are I'm going to stop doing it eventually, right? But if I feel like I'm getting better at it, I can get there, where I have a goal and I can get there, I have the resources to get there, I'm going to be automatically a lot more motivated to push harder and try and get there. That's one. I think number two is giving them little freedom. Think back to any instance where you've been forced to do something. I think eventually you just don't want to do it anymore. For example, a class that you didn't like in school or in college, where you had to take it up. Just think about the effort, and how much you worked for that class. And I don't think it's too much. So giving children some autonomy, and I know we can't give them all the freedom, but at least giving them some freedom within limits, right? So that they have to do three things. Maybe asking them what they would like to do first is a good example of giving them some autonomy, where they feel like they have some ownership over their schedule, right? And the third thing is also looking at the environment that they're training in. As parents, as coaches, sometimes we don't know what happens in the environment the athlete is training and competing in. I remember back to my sport experience. I faced a lot of pressure from my parents or from my coaches, but it's just the environment that I was competing in was so competitive that rubbed on me, right? And that is where I felt most pressure, not at home, not in the training process. So just being aware and working on creating a supportive environment, and again, that all goes down to training and education at the end of the day. But just being aware of this, I think, goes a long way in intrinsically motivating.
Kirtana, anything you would like to add here?
Yeah. So in terms of pressure, I think it's also important for the environment, right? Which is, it could be the coaches or the parents, to tell them or to make them see pressure in a different way. So make them understand whether they're actually burning out or they're not burning out. It's very important for parents and coaches to actively listen to them rather than making decisions as to how they must be feeling. There's this preconceived idea, although it may not be really hard for them, the child may not be feeling hard, parents decide that's going to be feeling hard for them, right? So that kind of a thing, it's better to communicate and also hear them out, and that's very important. So even in terms of, when they fail, when they succeed, during a match, like Amit Malik said, right? He said, I think his daughter told him about how she felt when two of the opponents didn't turn up. And that makes a bigger difference, right? And that's the most important part. It's not the win, but it's about how you actually feel about the win. So I think those things are very important. That's the most important part, rather than, anything else. I think this part needs to be addressed, definitely.
I totally agree with you. I think parents really need to self-manage themselves. And I'm speaking as a parent and not as a coach or as a sports psychologist, because that's where I come from, of course. But you really need to self-manage, look inwards about your thoughts on failure and success, right? What is your goal when you send your child off for sport? Your own personal goal. There shouldn't be any agenda. If there is one, you need to remove it. And, their successes and failures are not yours. And how and their equanimity through it should be your goal. And I see that with my son, and it wasn't even, and I don't take any credit for it. I think he has learned to be, equanimous through both, and then I know that he's resilient. I know he can handle whatever comes his way. And that's sort of the point of this exercise, because who knows where this will go. We all hope for the best. We want the best for our children. But what does success mean to you when it comes to your child playing sport? That's also very, very important, because every child obviously comes with different talents, different abilities. And there are all kinds of unforeseen situations that come up, like the pandemic, for example, right? For 2 years, we didn't have any competitive tournaments in cricket for a year at least. So, or there could be, God forbid, injuries, right? Things, all kinds of things come up, or illnesses. So you have to really look inwards, do some serious sort of self-awareness exercises, because you need to manage yourself around your child when it comes to their sport, and be able to deal with what comes up for them. I mean, there was a period in middle school in 6th grade where we were the emergency unit at Manipal Hospital knew us very well, because my child was, I was perpetually taking him from practice or from a match to emergency, because they're growing. It's a period of injuries. And then, so that's the challenge at that time. Now it's a different challenge, and you have to be able to manage yourself so that you are not stressing the child out. You are not showing your fear to the child. And it can be, for different people, it's different things. So I think there's a lot of learning for parents.
Absolutely.
In this process.
In fact, as we come to the end of the thing, there were two interesting questions or pointers on a parent and the athlete-kid relationship, or even an athlete-parent and an athlete-kid relationship. One was, should kids have the free will to choose a sport and make a career out of it, or should they be guided by their parents to try out different types of sports, or to be even instructed by a veteran to undergo tough training and excel in one? This is always going to be a challenge. And there's a second question which is similar to this, is how to remove pressure on a child's parent who themselves have been elite athletes or coaches and training their own kid. How do you maintain the balance? Amit, why don't you take a go at this? Yeah.
So second is quite interesting. Of course, I've seen Gopushan training his own daughter. So that's a real example in front of me. It's just very tough, easier said than done. Because I know a lot of Olympians who tried with their children doing that journey. But as Sujata said, that maybe it's important to detach ourselves with our unlived life or expectation. And let's see what best journey we can give through sports to the child. It is tough. I've seen a lot of such Olympians and their wives crying over the expectations on the child, because wherever they go, they are asked this question that will your be next one as well. So probably in that case, only way could be to keep it simple for the child from the day one. There's a lot of unsaid expectation in India when we have people who we can count on fingers as Olympic medalists. So that will be a lot of unsaid expectation on those children. But I've seen what is working is that look at the process, detach from my, rather align it to their journey is slightly easier part. I think also I want to want slightly different context that I work with a lot of coaches, PE teachers all over India. Now, their survival, their identity also gets measured always by the success. So I think as a parent, I also want to be compassionate toward the coaches, that their survival is actually depend on the result. This is the way system motivates them. Is there a way we as a parent to change the terminology? Can we look at a very wonderful coach who just makes children fall in love with the sports? And that's a duty of the coach, and he or she is equally valued. Not that he only produces Olympic medalists. And then there will be somebody who go to practice, we say, this coach is so wonderful coach because he can bring that discipline part to it. So I think as a parent also, that's my humble compassion toward our coaches, that we understand your problem, we understand what you go through, but we need to relook at things differently and maybe do what we do best. If there can be very good grassroots coaches, they'll be very self-assured that my role is to just have somebody fall in love with the sport, and let's leave it there. Somebody else will take care of the further.
Yeah.
What is the first question? If any, I missed some component of the first question. Tough training. Can you just repeat, Amit, once?
So the first question basically was more on, let me just read out the question to you. Should kids have the free will to choose a sport and make a career out of it, or should they be guided by their parents to try out different types of sports, or be instructed by a veteran to undergo tough training and excel in one?
So I would say it should be parent facilitated through inquiry-based question to child. I should facilitate. I learned this that the first question to ask the child after session is, what did you enjoy today? How did you feel today? What do you look forward to in your session? Have those questions so repeatedly. And slowly, when you have the question that, okay, you like cricket, but why do you like cricket? Coach अच्छा है क्या? खेलने मजा आता है, team sports. What do you enjoy there? What do you enjoy there? So have more inquiry-based question to help them, as if even if it is our decision, it should look like their decision. Because that will be so wonderful. They go through it. I have one example to share of VVS Lakshman. He shares that his father, when they were around 8-year-old onward, used to ask every day. The question was, how do you want to serve the society? How do you want to serve the society? And he said, my brother said, Dad, after 3-4 years of listening, that I want to serve society by being a very good doctor. And he said, Amin, we will support you wholeheartedly. Whole family will support you because you want to serve society by this. Lakshman said, I want to serve society by being a cricketer. Now, I like the beauty of the question itself, that they are not putting across something in their mind. So this is what I have done with a lot of younger children here, that have more inquiry-based facilitation. We as a parent, coaches can go through some understanding from the mental trainer that how to facilitate good conversation, a deeper dialogue with the children, so that it is their choice and opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, thanks, Amit. Sujata, you were saying something?
No.
Yes, actually,
I was just going to say,
yeah. Let's actually take this, Sujata, before,
Yeah. So, Amit, it's very important. As a parent, I felt like sharing with all the audiences who has joined today's webinar that, as a parent, we have to make them, a self-learning, like whether we take a decision or they take a decision, the freedom that, making them, that self learning is something that I feel that's I have been doing it with my daughter, and therefore I feel she takes better decision than in fact me. She is far more clear what exactly she wants to do. So there's absolutely no pressure on the child, neither from on me as a parent, neither from her as a side, in terms of choosing a right sport. I think self-learn, we need to encourage our child for doing a self-learning. And there's an important point I wanted to mention, but just because of that I just forgot, but I'll just
please go ahead.
Right, it's the commitment that I've observed while attending the sports day of my daughter during the school. I've seen parents not being attending those days, that the moral support that a child gets from a parents, and also that kind of encouragement, I think that also makes a lot of difference in increasing the interest in the sports from the child side.
True.
Otherwise, when they see that for them the main audience is their parents first, so I think the commitment that we expect from a child to make towards us choosing a sport, but as a parent also we have to be equally committed towards attending and taking them out and making as a fun element. What I do it, that they like the company of their cousins, friends. So, parents also have to get involved in playing the sports game along with them. That win weekends, during their birthdays, actually organize throwing a birthday party, we take them an adventure sport or something like that where they interact. So that's how it makes a fun element in the sports, and also an interest, that which sport they like the most, exploring all the sports options that are available.
True.
So I'd like to jump in here, Sakshi, and say that it really depends on the child, and this goes to showing me that you know your child well. Because with every child it's different. So with my son, once he chose cricket, and he chose it fairly early on, and after he was able to go on his own, which was after a while, right? In the beginning I had to go with him, but after he was able to go on his own, he wanted to be alone. He did not want my presence, and he doesn't want our presence when he plays his matches either. So it really does depend on each child. And again, I think it goes back to what Amit was saying about keeping those lines of conversation open and having those kind of conversations where your child has the freedom to share with you what they need from you.
True. In fact, there's so many other aspects that we can go on talking about. We are already more than an hour, and I know it's a Sunday, precious Sunday for everyone. In fact, for the participants, there are quite a few questions that we've got through your registration. You can always email us questions on the two email IDs that I have shared on the screen, and I hope you can see the screen. But before we leave, there's something very interesting I would like to tell you about how Norway, as a country, treats sports. Is probably at the other end of the spectrum, but we can pick up a few things from what they do. Some of you may not know, but Norway has won more Winter Olympic medals than any other country in the world. They have 405 Winter Olympic medals to their credit. They have the chess player who's the world number one in Magnus Carlsen. Then there is a tennis player who's in the top 10 called Casper Ruud. They have a top 10 footballer. They have the 400 meters hurdles world champion, world record holder in Carlsen Walholm, and so many other things. And it's a population of 5.3 million. But how did they achieve this? Well, there are certain things that they follow. I'll just read out, and this is from an article which had come in I think McKinsey Quarterly or a Harvard Business Review. One is that to start with, children are encouraged to play as many sports as possible. Secondly, they are encouraged to choose their own sport or sports and are not influenced by their parent or coach. Clubs form the backbone of sports in Norway, with 12,000 clubs across the country and mostly run by volunteers. And the clubs aren't allowed to hold any ranking based on competitive games for kids under 13. Promising kids can specialize in a chosen sport and receive high caliber coaching, but even they are encouraged to play multiple sports and remain with their club until they turn 14, 15. Even at the elite level, coaching is far less rigid in Norway than in many other countries. In fact, the 400 meters hurdle champion, Walholm, didn't concentrate on hurdles until he was 20, and he spent most of his time competing in decathlon. So clearly there is a bit of freedom given, there's a bit of encouragement given, but mindful that coaches and parents have a role to play. It's not that their kids are left on their own, but there's a certain role to play. There's a lot, I think, that we can pick up from these inputs from Norway and inculcate in our way our own approach. So that's. I just wanted to end this webinar with this. There's so much more we can talk about, and I'm going to make an effort to respond to the questions I've received from the participants on their email or on their WhatsApp. Sorry about the technical glitches with the muting, unmuting. I was out of my comfort zone and using a new device. I was using a Mac while I'm used to a HP, so that's where the struggle happened. Apologies once again, and thank you all of you, Sakshi, Sujata, Amit, Kirtana, Morel, and for all the participants, the audiences, we will be coming up with similar webinars. The next one, in fact, is going to focus on coaches and what are the various aspects and the pressures that the coach goes through when they're handling age-level kids, when they're handling kids who are at an adolescent age. It's not easy. Me being a father of a teenage kid and a slightly older kid, we know how it is difficult handling the kids, and a single coach in India is handling hundreds and thousands of kids together. So our next webinar is going to be specifically for coaches, and that will be at the end of May, 29th of May to be precise. And always happy to answer questions. Please write in to us, visit our website, and hope to see you again, and this time without the technical glitches. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amit.
Amit. Thank you, everyone.